Department of War and versus Anthropic. So basically, Anthropic let everybody know they were having a difference of opinion with the Department of War and Pete Hegseth. Basically, they didn't agree to how Claude was going to be used by the government. So they, made it public, and we're having this conversation online on Twitter specifically, where people were choosing sides, and you were just debating basically like, what do you want an AI company to allow the government and the U.S. military to do? And Anthropic came out very forcefully saying that there's two clauses. We want them to agree before we actually let them, work with Claude. And the government said no. And at the time, Sam Altman came out and said that he was in support of Anthropic. So it seemed like here we have like the two main companies that are popular that we know, OpenAI and Anthropic, and they're standing up for us, the consumer, against the government. And the Anthropic deal, goes away, and all of a sudden, Sam Altman announces that they are now stepping in to fulfill the contract that Anthropic and Claude are stepping away from. It was within hours, which, made people question, like, wait, how long had this been happening? Had Sam, caused this to happen? And then the contract says that the Department of War can use OpenAI's tech for all lawful purposes, which is, the clause that Claude was trying to push back against. And said that even that some forms of mass surveillance were legal. Sam later admitted that the deal was definitely rushed and that the optics didn't look good, and announced that he would be doing an AMA on Twitter. And that also didn't go very well because he started getting pushback, from people stepping in asking like, how is this possible? What did you agree to? And then it led to a mass exodus of people leaving the platform. So as of today, about 1.5 million users have quit OpenAI and ChatGPT, which is crazy to think about. And since then, Sam and OpenAI are kind of trying to walk back what happened. It ended up being a communications failure for me. So would love your thoughts, Nick. I know that this is kind of like in your wheelhouse in terms of like the cultural aspects. So yeah, would love to know what your thinking behind this like PR disaster was.
Um, the over-explaining thing, I think, is at the heart of it. Is
Hmm.
in the gold rush that is this whole AI situation, the founders are so keen to be first with everything, first to ship, that in going after those goals so aggressively, the long tail of the communications isn't catching up fast enough.
Hmm.
So then they're having to kind of over-explain and put all of this energy into explaining when they haven't actually worked out
Hmm.
what all the implications are. And I think that's the tip of the spear here in the way things are coming out, because desperate to announce as quickly as it possible and beat the other guy, and not really taking much appreciation for the fact that what they are saying at the time they're saying it has deep ramifications, and all of the waves of commentary and feedback and analysis that is happening around this. It's then they're coming out with another message, so it is
Hmm.
such a muddle of messaging at the same time, at a time where people are trying to make intelligent choices
Hmm.
about what tools to use and make intelligent choices about their privacy.
Hmm.
So, and I think, again, there's a little bit of psychology here in the culture, is that someone who has to talk that much about it, it's, the lady doth protest too
Yeah.
much, a little bit, you know?
Exactly. I definitely think there's that. There's also just the battle that was happening on Twitter, how the optics are like working out, and everyone's like digging around for clues and Easter eggs, right? They want to find that like gotcha. And sure enough, as more information kind of came out, it was revealed that, the deal wasn't different than the Anthropic Claude one that, they had staunchly opposed and that Sam Altman had said he was in favor of. So it just seemed very like, slimy and like backstabby. So it doesn't surprise me that people are like leaving leaving the platform,
And just from what you've described, what does that remind you of, Sonia, that behavior? Because in that thing you've just described there, take the names out, and the situation is exactly like a couple of beauty influencers going at it.
Mm,
And, you know, the showing the receipts, and I said this first, and no, you didn't, and here's why, and all the rest of it. And this is Secretary of Defense and two massive billionaire AI company owners.
mhm,
And they're behaving in a way that is, you know, this is not only mass surveillance and national security, this is people's information, their livelihoods, you know, people
mhm.
are putting everything into these models.
Right.
So to have a little bit of a bitch slap fight on social media about it is,
Yeah, I think that's definitely been the thing, and as more like what you were saying, the more that he tries to explain it and say what's happening, and then the more he gets caught in the lie, the worse that it becomes, right? Because now people are looking at every single tweet. These are things now that he's going to continue having to face. These are questions he's going to get every single time. Another thing here that kind of happened in light of the Iran conflict. I wonder how much the administration and, Hegseth pushed the timeline forward to even, remove at least to make it seem as if they had taken the time to review a contract and do a different one. The timeline was like squashed together, and then there was no room for like Altman and OpenAI to even try to say that like, oh, we did take time to like, look at the contract and see what changed. But because it was like it went from one day to the next, that it got rid of all the plausible deniability that he could have had. And obviously that's something that, the government and Hegseth don't care about. They don't care about the optics about, working with OpenAI, or having, Sam Altman and the company, come across as looking good to like the American public. They just care about winning, right? So the fact that they were able to get an AI company that is, pretty much number one right now, right? Like out of all the AIs, that's the most popular, the most well known, and get it to sign the contract that another one had spurned, it seems like a win. And then to just like push them into this, role of like having to protect, it kind of drew the tension away from, the Department of War and Hegseth, right? So on their part, they're like, well, we got what we wanted, left OpenAI and Altman to like the wolves, having to explain themselves to everybody, the tech community, to their users, and figure out like what, they were going to do going forward. So a couple lessons here. The sequencing matters, especially when you're in crisis mode. As much as you can, you're trying to, make it seem as if you're actually thinking things through and that you're explaining things properly. Sometimes instead of over explaining, it's better to explain less because that leaves more question for people to go in there and ask, well, why did you say this when you, clearly meant this? Instead of giving people the room to, question all these things, because you're acting like it's a debate, as opposed to, something that you're announcing, people feel more betrayed than if you had just said that, like, hey, this is what we're doing and how we're moving forward. By giving people a chance to push back, it almost seems as if you might change your mind. And that clearly wasn't going to happen here. Though, we'll see what happens now that 1.5 million people have left the platform in protests, right? um and then also, here's another example of Anthropic getting, marketing for their products, right? The day after they announced that they weren't going to be working with the government, it became the number one app in the App Store, right? Because people
wow.
were, shouting it out and saying like, hey, this is the new AI that you have to use. So, without spending any dollar on marketing, which, they did for the, the Super Bowl, which didn't go in their favor. Here you have, people finding out what Anthropic is, realizing that they prefer it, that, hey, they're sticking up for us, in front of the government, so it made it seem as if they were, the David against the Goliath of the government and then OpenAI, right? So it just like made them look way, way good, this whole time. So those are, a couple lessons to think about when hopefully none of the companies that we're talking to here find themselves in this mode. But if you do, here are things to think about going forward.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on at a jaunty angle here because I find the whole timing and what's been said and, you know, suddenly a lot of people jumping across to Claude very interesting because Dario from Anthropic was on Meet the Press 3 days ago,
Mhm,
and he made no bones about the fact that Anthropic leans forward into working with the Department of War.
mhm,
And they were the first to integrate technologies, and the fact that they're still working with the Department of War. So he's hedging his bets there big time.
well, so they have
And
the 6 months contract that they have to finish
right.
out, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and, the Iran conflict was run through Claude, that came out yesterday. So clearly
And I've
there's
seen a lot of push pieces
Mhm,
in LinkedIn, across social media, which the way they're written and the way they're pushed out, leads me to believe that they're paid shills.
mhm,
Um, so there's definitely a concerted campaign that Anthropic is doing at the moment and clearly winning. So,
mhm,
it's going to be interesting to see what OpenAI and ChatGPT come back with, because in
mhm,
my mind now, and you talk about it on a brand level, these are brands, kind of in conflict with each other. And they're doing it not through kind of slanging matches, hasn't got to that point yet,
mhm,
but they're doing it through this kind of discreet, well, we have some morals and values and principles
mhm,
and you don't, kind of PR war.
mhm,
Um, and what really hangs in the balance is the privacy and surveillance
mhm,
of it, not just one nation, but many nations.
mhm.
Um, and I think there's just a lot of kind of look over here misdirection
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, 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 for sure.